For decades, Kodak was so dominant that it seemed impossible to imagine a world without it. In the United States, capturing a memory was practically synonymous with using Kodak. Road trips along Route 66, birthdays in California suburbs, weddings in small Midwestern churches, everything went by the same name. And that's exactly why this story is so unsettling. Because Kodak didn't lose to a smarter competitor. It lost to something that was born within itself. Here's the part almost nobody likes to admit. Kodak invented the digital camera before anyone else, perfectly understood the impact of the technology, and yet chose not to follow that path. It wasn't naivete. It was a rational decision, praised and defended in well-structured meetings. And yet, that decision cost the company its relevance. This shatters a common belief that simply being a pioneer is enough to win. It's not. And throughout this video, it becomes clear why. While other companies bet on convenience, habit, and human behavior, Kodak bet on protecting what was already working. It seems logical, until it isn't. This story isn't just about photography or technology. It's about how people, companies, and careers jeopardize their own future trying to preserve security. And the question that remains open is simple and uncomfortable. How many times has someone had the right answer in their hands but chose not to use it? This answer emerges gradually and changes the way you see big and small decisions. For decades, Kodak was the absolute synonym for photography in the United States. Families traveling through California, graduations in Texas, weddings in New York, everything went through a roll of Kodak film. It was such a dominant brand that it seemed impossible for anyone to question its leadership. And that's precisely where the intriguing contradiction lies. The company that defined modern photography was the same one that created the technology that would end it. In 1975, within its own laboratories, an engineer named Steven Sasson, he built something that nobody was asking for, nobody imagined needing, and that would change everything. It wasn't in Silicon Valley, it wasn't in a makeshift garage, it was in the heart of Kodak. The prototype seemed almost a joke by the standards of the time. A large, heavy camera that recorded images on cassette tape and took more than 20 seconds to capture a photo. But the point was never aesthetics or speed. The point was the principle. For the first time, photography didn't depend on film, chemicals, or physical development. Everything became data. Pure information. For those who understand business, this already raises an alarm. Whenever something becomes data, scale, cost, and control change completely. It's the same shock many people felt when they saw the first smartphone replace cameras, maps, calendars, and even wallets. And even with all these clues, what seemed like a technical advancement was treated only as an internal curiosity. And here's a detail that few people mention. Kodak didn't ignore the invention. They perfectly understood what it meant. Executives knew that if that technology advanced, the entire model of film, developing, and photographic paper would lose its strength. It was like discovering an electric motor within a company that profits from gasoline. The knowledge was there, documented, tested, functional. The question wasn't, does it work? It was, is it worthwhile for us? And if this story is already making sense to you, it's worth considering. Subscribe to the channel, because what follows shows how seemingly rational decisions can jeopardize the future of any business, including yours. Within Kodak, the problem was never a lack of technical vision. It was an excess of clarity about the financial impact. Executives understood that the digital camera worked, but they also understood what it broke down along the way. Film, chemicals, photographic paper, developing machines scattered throughout shopping malls from Ohio to Florida. All of this sustained high and predictable margins. The digital camera didn't promise that. It cut out steps, eliminated recurring consumption, and put too much power in the hands of the consumer. For a company accustomed to controlling every step of the chain, this sounded like relinquishing the steering wheel at high speed. And nobody does that without hesitation. The most curious thing is that the prototype wasn't hidden out of ignorance, but out of calculated fear. Internally, there were presentations, reports, and tests that showed a different future. But this future required killing the company's most profitable business with their own hands. And few organizations can do that without internal conflict. It's the same dilemma many professionals face when they realize their core skill might become obsolete. Learning something new means accepting that years of experience might not be worth as much tomorrow. And the question worth commenting on below remains: if you were in their shoes, would you have protected immediate profits or bet on an uncertain future? This type of decision seems distant, but it happens on a smaller scale all the time. People avoid learning new tools, companies avoid new models, careers get stuck in what has always worked. Kodak chose to keep the technology in a drawer, treating it as an internal threat instead of an external opportunity. The problem is that technology doesn't wait for consensus. While the company tried to protect its castle, others watched the walls and noted where the gaps were. And that's exactly where the story starts to get out of control. Because when you don't move forward, someone else moves forward for you. With digital technology in reserve, Kodak did what it always knew how to do best. It reinforced its strength. It invested even more in film, chemical processes, incremental quality improvements, and campaigns that extolled color fidelity, texture, and tradition. For the American public, this made sense at that time. Photography was still a special event, linked to travel, holidays, and family memories. Film seemed reliable, almost ritualistic. Meanwhile, digital was treated as an expensive, limited, soulless toy. The company bet that visual quality would win over convenience, ignoring how habits change when friction disappears. The mistake wasn't trusting the core product, but confusing market leadership with cultural permanence. Kodak believed that by dominating the standard, it would set the pace for change. But technology doesn't ask for permission. This had already happened in other sectors. Video rental stores ignored streaming. Newspapers ignored digital platforms. Manufacturers of printed maps ignored apps, always with the same argument. This doesn't replace the real experience, but the public rarely chooses the technically best. They choose the simplest to use on a typical day. And that difference weighs more than graphics or specifications. Meanwhile, Kodak remained confident, protecting margins and ignoring accumulating weak signals. In meetings, the focus was on maintaining market share, not reinventing the structure. Film was still profitable, and profit creates comfort. But prolonged comfort usually comes at a high price. If this pattern has appeared in your professional life or in decisions you observe closely, it's worth considering. Leave a like on the video, because recognizing this type of trap early completely changes the game. And in the next point, it becomes clear what happens when other companies decide to act while you protect what you already have. While Kodak protected what already worked, other companies moved forward with less attachment to the past. Sony began to treat the digital camera as a consumer product, not as an experiment. It didn't need to be perfect, it needed to be practical. Shortly after Apple, he understood something even simpler. The camera didn't need to be the main product. It just needed to be part of something people already carried in their pockets. When the phone became a camera, the market logic changed completely. It was no longer about color fidelity in the lab. It was about capturing the moment before it passed. Kodak did possess important patents, some essential for digital photography. But patents don't create habits, products do. While competitors tested, failed, and adjusted quickly, Kodak remained stuck in long decision-making cycles. This is the difference between those who release imperfect versions and learn from the public, and those who wait for the ideal scenario that never arrives. In the United States, this happens constantly in startups and traditional companies. Those who accept learning from the public tend to gain speed. Those who demand absolute certainty tend to arrive late. And it's worth taking a second to think about this personally. How many times does someone see another person gain ground using a simpler solution while continuing to defend something more elaborate that nobody asked for? This isn't just about technology, it's about behavior. So here's the question that really matters and that I want to see in the comments. Do you think Kodak lost because it ignored digital technology, or because it took too long to accept that the consumer had changed? Kodak's downfall wasn't due to a lack of intelligence, talent, or resources. It happened because innovation is more uncomfortable than it seems in textbooks. The company created the future, but tried to fit it into the past. This pattern has a name in the business world, popularized by the innovator's dilemma. The central idea is simple to understand and difficult to put into practice. Successful companies learn to listen so well to their best customers that they become blind to the next emerging behavior. They optimize the present so much that they forfeit their right to tomorrow. The key point here is self-disruption. It's not enough to launch something new. You have to allow that new thing to disrupt what already works. Few organizations do this voluntarily. And in people's daily lives, the logic is identical. Professionals avoid exchanging established skills for uncertain competencies. Entrepreneurs insist on models that have already yielded returns. Even entire careers remain stuck in decisions that were correct at another stage of life. The practical lesson is clear. Those who don't create space to make mistakes early on pay dearly for making them later. Kodak didn't die the moment it ignored the digital camera, but the moment it decided that protecting efficiency was more important than testing relevance. And this lesson is valuable far beyond photography. It applies to business, career, investments, and personal decisions. In a world where habits change rapidly and technology reduces barriers, the real risk isn't trying something new and failing. The risk is continuing to win a game that's already being abandoned. Kodak's story isn't about pointing out others' mistakes. It serves as a mirror, because deep down, everyone has held on to something that worked for fear of trying the next step. Whether in career, business, or personal decisions, comfort often seems logical until it becomes a limitation. The big question isn't whether you'll fail trying something new. The question is how long you'll insist on something that's no longer growing. Looking at this case helps to identify patterns. Companies that disappear, professionals who stagnate, ideas that never leave the drawing board. It all starts with the same internal phrase. This is still working. But working for whom? For the market? For you? Or only for the past? Thinking about this changes the way you make small decisions every day, from learning a new skill to changing how you work or invest your time. So I'll leave you with a few questions to take forward and answer in the comments. What are you protecting today that perhaps needs to be questioned? What skill, project, or habit has already yielded results but no longer takes you where you want to go? If this story made you reflect, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the idea here is simple. Learn from real mistakes so you don't repeat the same patterns disguised as security.